Welcome to another Ships Tips Essentials. The thing I'm going to talk to you about on this video is colours of groundbait, because it's really important and it gives you the confidence on, at certain times of the year and certain venues. The colours you're using obviously makes a big difference to what fish you catch. There's no doubt about it. And these three ground baits here, I think, cover a lot of my fishing, especially on commercials. Now let's start off with green. So we got Super Crush Green here. It's one of my favourite ground baits, it has been for several months now. And I think green ground bait for me is when I'm not too sure, to be perfectly honest. I think it matches the water of a lot of venues. You've always got that green tint in it. Even the lake I'm fishing today, it's actually quite grey, and when you put green in it, it matches that colour. And I think it's one of them where you're not too sure, try green. You can always add these ground baits together as well, which is what I'll talk to you about in a minute. So if you're going to a venue, you're not too sure, green is go, basically. For me, I think it's a great sort of, it sits on the bottom. It's very nice on the bottom when you look at it. It's not bright, it just blends in perfectly. So let's move on to one of the sort of biggest things in fishing is F1 dark. For me, when I'm going to skimmer venues, bream venues, especially when you're trying to catch all sorts of different sizes, whether you're on natural waters or even commercials, because some commercials go very clear. I fished a commercial recently in a match, and the water, because it was cold, we've just gone through a real icy stage in the weather, it was like super clear, and that's when F1 dark comes in. Now, one thing you can do, if you love, like I do, Super Crush Green, you can add F1 dark into that as well. And that's something that I do quite a bit, because there's certain ground baits like Super Crush Green I love for bream and skimmers. I've got so much confidence with it. But if I go to a venue, I think, I want a dark ground bait, just mix your F1 to Super Crush Green. You can mix it 50-50. Normally for me, on a natural sort of, a normal day, I will probably mix 70% F1 dark to 30% Super Crush Green. That's the sort of thing. Or you can mix it around in the bucket first and see what it looks like, and then add your water. But as you add the water, it will turn it darker. But it's a great way of doing it if you love those fishmeal ground baits, which we all do. So that's the F1 dark. As we all know, it's probably one of the most used ground baits in feeder fishing, pole fishing, when we're trying to catch skimmers and bream. Now, it's one of them ground baits that I've spoke about for years and years. I was heavily involved in this when Sonubaits first made this ground bait match method mix. It's one of them. You can use it for everything. I know people that use the dark version for this. They love it for bream and skimmers. For me personally, it's just one of them. It's my go-to method feeder ground bait. Whether I'm mixing pellets with it, whether I use it neat, whether I'm going to a cart water, an F1 water, this stuff does everything. It's a fantastic ground bait. It's one of the biggest selling ground baits ever, I think, of Sonubaits especially. But it's a lightish coloured ground bait. Now, I think as the temperature gets warmer, having that light coloured ground bait makes a difference. It creates a cloud. When the fish are feeding, they love all that. They love everything steering it. You know what it's like down the edge when you put ground bait down the edge and it's all turning over, and it just drags more and more carp in your peg. And that's exactly what match method mix can do on a method feeder. I've been to venues, I'm going to a venue soon where it is absolutely gin clear, right? But because it sees a lot of carp anglers, so they're spodding and they're using zigs. So what they do, they try and create a massive cloud. It's a deep water, it's a natural water with carp and bream in. And I've made the mistake by going there thinking it's clear water, I'm going to use a dark ground bait. It's been absolutely, I do get a few fish, but I've made the mistake, and I went back home and I thought, I messed around. I've watched people fishing, and I've seen a couple of guys fishing light ground bait and they've had a bigger response. I've gone out next time, just use neat match method mix, because it's bright, it's light, You know, you chuck it down the edge on the day when in the clear water and you think, cool, look at that. It shows up like a beacon on the bottom. It looks completely wrong, but it's what it does to those fish. They're so used to spodding and making a cloud. They're swimming around in it and they love it. And I've gone there, changed my mix, and it is played a huge part of catching loads more fish. So never be afraid to use a light ground bait on a clear water. Some days, I mean, when I used to fish for England, we used to go to venues that were really, really clear, and the worst thing you could do was fish a dark ground bait because the fish wanted to swim around in it, off the bottom, and they just loved it. And that's where you learn all these things, and that's what we pass on to you as a company. So, but there's no harm at all if you do like any of these ground bait. If you want to put a bit of super crushed green in with your match method mix because you love it that much and you want to just tone it down, add a bit of super crushed green, or if you want to darken it off, add a bit of dark F1. Now, all these mixes are quite fine, so they're great for winter, spring, even if you obviously going into summer, if you want to use them, absolutely fine. But that's what I love about these three ground baits, is I can use these all year round for all, and you'll see in my bucket when I go fishing, you'll see it on my Facebook page, a lot of time I'm using these three ground baits for most of my fishing. So there you go, I hope that helps. Would never be afraid to use match method in clear water because the results can be absolutely huge.